Nathan, a lot to get through. It is Thursday night, so John Giles is going to be along just after 7:30. Graham Hunter will be joining us in the football show to talk about last night's UEFA Super Cup final, which was actually a brilliant game of football, as well as the opening weekend of La Liga. Kicks off this Saturday, and then Sunday the biggest game is probably Atletico Madrid heading to Valencia. We will also be looking at the hurling final on Sunday as Galway, Limerick, Loughorns at Croke Park, and plenty more besides. Kieran Cunningham of the Irish Daily Star is with us. Hello, sir.
How are you?
Will, hello.
Even Dave. Thanks
a million for coming in, lads. I was doing a little bit of prep for the show today. I was going about my business. Next of all, I get a notification on my phone telling me that Ireland has a world boxing champion, that TJ Doheny has been crowned the new IBF Super Bantamweight champion of the world.
Yeah.
I didn't know a lot about TJ before I got this notification on my phone, Kieran. There would have been a time when the news of an Irish world champion at any weight would have been greeted with a huge amount of rapture. And yet this has almost slipped under the radar. I didn't even know he was fighting in Japan.
Yeah, well, I think it has. Like, bar a few pieces in various media, and Mick Foley had a good interview with him in the Sunday Times Sunday, for example. But more or less, and like the main boxing writers, which there aren't very many of anymore, have been tracking his career over the last while. But he has flown under the radar. And one of the things that's interesting, like if you Googled him earlier when you got that text, you would have found he had no Wikipedia page.
Yeah.
But now he has one. Someone's put one up, so the last couple of hours. But that's how, like, a guy is fighting for a world title, and everybody's in Wikipedia. You're probably in Wikipedia.
I don't think I am.
You will be at the end of the show.
Wikipedia stoops to the odd low here and there, but they haven't gone that low.
Yeah.
Why a Thursday afternoon? Well, certainly from an Irish time point of view, why?
Well, it's in Tokyo, so you have a time difference.
So it's a Thursday evening in Tokyo.
Yeah, so for whatever reason, perhaps that's, I don't know the ins and outs of it. Maybe that's a common fight night in Japan for some reason. But just to put this into context, like this guy, he was good enough. He beat Carl Frampton as an amateur, but he never won an Irish senior title. His goal was to make the Beijing Olympics, but the guy who stopped him in Ireland, so he couldn't get onto the qualifiers or the World Championship, whatever, was John Joe Nevin.
Okay.
So that was the kind of competition he was up against. And he says himself in that interview with Mick the other day that, he was a bit of a brat, basically, was the word he used, and he decided, to get a clean break, get out of Ireland. So he went to Australia, and people would be quite sceptical about the Australia boxing scene. But he's come through that.
In terms of its standard?
Yeah, that it's just not quite up there. But he worked his way up, and by all accounts, his dedication the last few years has been unreal. And I watched the fight today, and like he beat, this guy beat, I'm not sure the pronunciation, Ryosuke Iwasa.
Yeah, Will will have it down at the moment.
The reigning champion.
Will's been practicing it all afternoon since the news came through.
But the reigning champion, I think he'd fought in that venue, 20 times or something in his career. So it's like beating an Irish champion in the National Stadium. To go over to Tokyo and to get the verdict in a very tough fight, like it's a remarkable story. And it's a strange time for Irish boxing, because there are three world champions at the moment, Ryan Burnett and Katie Taylor as well. And Paddy Barnes actually fighting for a world title on Saturday.
Yeah,
and you talk about this going under the radar. Paddy Barnes
I'm presenting off the ball here tonight, and we do like to project a sense of some knowledge of sport and the way the sport's going in any given week. But I didn't know Paddy was fighting this weekend.
Yeah.
And I remember, and I know it's a different time, I remember the week before the first Collins Eubank fight, and pretty much that's all anybody wanted to talk about. Even going back in more recent days, I remember the build-up to Bernard Dunn's title fight, because it was the same week as Ireland were...
I was contesting with a rugby...
In the Grand Slam with Cardiff. And you just want to talk about the rugby, and you wanted to talk about Bernard Dunn, and it went down as one of the greatest days in the history of Irish sport. And yet here we are, Paddy Barnes, one of the best-known sports personalities in this country. An Olympic superstar. And he has worked his way through the professional ranks to the point where he's going with a world title belt on the line this weekend, and I didn't know he was fighting. Now, how has that happened?
And he's getting a shot at a world title in his sixth pro fight, which is amazing. And, well, you can go into various reasons, but the main reason is what's gone on with MTK, the artist formerly known as MGM.
Yeah.
And all that's gone in with it, with the ban and the boycotts, because of media coverage of the Daniel Kinahan connection, and that has led like I know I don't cover any of the MTK fighters now. Like even without interviewing them, I think I would have an issue with it at the moment.
Yeah.
You know, because there's a lack of honesty about what's going on. And like I did an interview with Billy Walsh to tie in with 10 years into the Beijing Olympics. But I thought, well, I had Billy on the line. I'd ask him about the MTK thing. And he came out really strongly. We ran a piece on it last week. He said, how can people with these kind of questionable links, and you're looking at where their money is likely to have come from, how are they allowed to get involved in our sport, as he says? And the reason more people aren't speaking out is they're afraid to speak out. And this is, you know, it's dangerous territory. And I do feel like I knew Paddy for a long time. I had a great time for Michael Conlon, Jamie Conlon, a lot of people at Crowd Frampton, a lot of people that are involved in MTK. And I could see boxers why they go there, because they're well looked after.
It's a good
they're
setup.
well paid. There's a very professional setup. But it's also a very questionable setup. And like I was at the thing with Katie Taylor a few months ago, and Brian Peters, our manager, because he's always asked, why isn't she fighting in Dublin? And he said, the advice not to fight in Dublin. It's not even the fact that they might have MTK fighters and undercard, which might cause a problem because of incidents that have happened before, but also because big pro boxing bills are a magnet now for some gangland figures. So it's just, this. I think this is the only capital city in Europe that can't host a major pro boxing bill. Like the small hall shows that go on, and a lot of people doing good work on that. But that's a big problem for boxing, because in many ways boxing is booming in Ireland still, even though it's not getting the publicity it did a couple of years ago. But this is the massive elephant in the room. Yeah,
it's kind of sad that we could have a world champion and just the fourth current world champion come the end of the weekend, and it'll just fly under the radar, just like TJ Doheny has flown under the radar. Get your text into us, 53106 or 30 cent. You can tweet us at Off the Ball on Twitter. There has been a text in on Doheny. You're not alone, lads. Just Google this Doheny lad. 14 knockouts from 20 fights. Seems like he's earned his nickname, The Power. How have I not heard from this guy? Says Larry in Monaghan. There is a Dave McIntyre on Wikipedia as well. Going back to what we spoke about earlier.
Is it you?
He's a Canadian ice hockey player.
Okay.
David John McIntyre, born February 4th, 1987.
No, we don't need the details. Yeah, okay.
He's a Canadian professional ice hockey forward, currently plays for and is an alternate captain of EV Zug of the National League A.
Nice.
But I'm a top rugby league player and coach. So.
All right, well you are. Well, I've heard of your
Captain Great Britain.
I've heard of your doppelganger on Wikipedia, but I haven't heard of my
Willow
own.
Callahan, any other Willow Callahan?
I don't think so. Yeah, I think only the one. I think in fairness, Dave, as well on Doheny, like he is a fairly unique case in that he's never boxed on Irish soil in those 20 fights. Yeah, the fact, I think originally when he went to Australia, the plan was to go for a year, maybe, you know, live the life abroad for a year or two. He really liked it there, settled down, worked his way through not just Australia, but he's fought a few times in Southeast Asia as well. So for anyone who's following him, maybe outside of Portlaoise, where you're following maybe an old kid from the town, I don't think too many people would have been taking too much attention for TJ Doheny, at least up until about 6 months ago when he became the mandatory challenger in the IBF division.
But
there's another factor.
The point does stack up though, until we look at the Paddy Barnes situation. And a guy who we know, and every sports fan in this country could pick him out of a lineup if he walked into a room, and yet that's happening this weekend.
But there's another factor that ties into all of this as well, Dave, is that the media has become squeezed so much, particularly like a few years ago, you had specialist boxing correspondents, golf correspondents, athletics, etc. And this happened in the UK as well. They're virtually all gone. Now it's all rounders. There are very few specialists left. And particularly the way the GA calendar has gone this year, it's so packed that most of the people who do like to do a bit of boxing, I find it very hard to do anything outside the GA. Like I would actually love to have done something TJ Doheny, but you had 2 All-Ireland semi-finals in football last week. You have a hurling final this week. You have Dublin, the press nights for the football final taking place, and then the start of the Premier League. So it's just... so
we're not sending guys out to Tokyo for world title fights?
No, like there was a fight. Like Jerry Callan was with us for 30 years, and Jerry would have, like his nickname was Vegas Jerry, because he went to Vegas so much. Because but that was the thing, you just, any fight, no, okay, Jerry, off you go. Now, like, if you're trying to go to something in London, media outlets look at it, can we afford this? Let alone Vegas, so let alone Tokyo.
It's a nice nickname to have been given, particularly if it's based on something that's actually happened. So fair play to Jerry. Now, I would have, in my very early media days, would have had dealings with Jerry, and if there was anyone that knew more about boxing in this country, I hadn't met them. As the foremost radio sports show, Thanks a million. Compliment at the very start, but I think that's as high as it's going to get. Is it not your role to hype and inform us about these world title boxing bouts? From Colm, who is of Pablo Picante fame.
Has Andy talked about Andy Lee? I'm not sure.
We will have him in studio.
Yeah.
We'll have him in studio on Tuesday evening, or on Tuesday, reviewing Carl Frampton's fight in Belfast this weekend. So we'll certainly be talking to Andy about TJ Doheny. We have been trying to get a hold of him as well, but he's probably out celebrating and enjoying himself. I don't know what time it is in Tokyo now, but it's probably beyond midnight anyway. Hopefully we'll have him on the show in the next few days. So keep your texts coming in at 53106. You can get us on Twitter at Off The Ball. Tonight's news round brought to you with Screwfix.ie, championing the trade with a choice of over 20,000 quality trade products. And it is the world title now held by TJ Doheny, Will, that we are starting with.
Yeah, TJ Doheny crowned the new IBF Super Bantamweight World Boxing Champion this afternoon. The Portlaoise man came through a battle with the defending champion Rizuki Iwasa, getting the decision from all the judges after 12 rounds in Tokyo. Doheny, who's been based in Australia for the last decade, becomes the third current Irish world champion, joining Ryan Burnett and Katie Taylor. Minister for Sport Shane Ross has commended Doheny for his hard work, commitment and dedication in making boxing history. The Portlaoise football panel were watching in the town the victory this lunchtime, and here's a video that was captured by their player Dean Cullen earlier. Maggie May's bar in Portlaoise where they were watching earlier.
Certainly hasn't flown under the radar.
That's what I'm about to say that. Yeah, I think they definitely knew it was on.
And it would appear that he was very much on the radar of our esteemed Minister Shane Ross as well.
Yeah.
He probably knew all about the fact this fight was taking place. And
there's probably boxing funding for Australia on the way.
Yeah, after, well, did he promise $1.5 million to buy pommel horses after Reece McClenaghan, the gymnastics?
We jest, of course.
No, and no, okay, I'll let him go. I was going to pick up on famously, his Twitter account tweeted, "Go Katie, go," 6 hours after she was beaten in Rio. I think that was a prepared tweet that somebody pressed send when you shouldn't. Sorry, Minister.
Yeah, put that on a timer and it'll go out regardless of what the situation is. So, look, we're going to be familiarising ourselves with TJ Doheny now that he's actually gone and done what he's done, and we'll be looking to get him on the show as soon as we possibly can.
Dave, I was watching the fight earlier on ESPN as well, and it's probably worth saying that they felt he lost the fight earlier as well. Dan Raphael was pretty strong after the fight too, that they felt the decision was going to go Iwasa's way. It was a difficult fight to call. You watched it as well, Kieran.
Yeah.
So he obviously took a lot of punishment in the first couple of rounds.
It was a gruesome enough fight,
wasn't it? But you know, I don't know what the site, is it called CompuScore or CompuBox or something? You know, the computer, the software that tracks fights, and they had him ahead on every, punches thrown, punches that made contact, etc. That they had him out in front. It was actually very close to what the judges went for, so you would have to trust. I
was just wondering whether I was biased, because I heard the ESPN guys, so watching the ESPN Plus app earlier on, and they were kind of screaming that Iwasa should have won, and I was there thinking, have I just been far too patriotic in thinking that Doheny has won this fight? But it was a cracker of a fight.
TJ Doheny, not the only world champion who's been a little unheralded and overlooked, because the texter has been in on 53106. John Keenan of Cuchulainn Archers and Archery Ireland has just won 2 world championship titles in 2 days in Switzerland in archery. Not sure if it has made the news round this evening, but it's the point has been well made. And somebody has been, the stat on the CompuBox was Iwasa was more efficient with his power punches. He had 37%. Doheny stayed busier out throwing Iwasa 604 to 485, and I guess that's crucial if you're trying to get a hometown decision overturned and you're trying to beat someone on their own patch.
Actually, it's been. I was thinking about this the other week, Dave. The Irish sport on an international level has never been stronger. Because it was a case for years that, you might have a couple of athletes like Sonia O'Sullivan and Eamon Collin,
outliers.
Or Dave Gay, outliers. A couple of boxers are generally doing okay. Soccer team was up and down at different times. But now, like rugby, the rugby team has never been stronger. Golf, we're always very competitive. Horse racing, obviously. Boxing is still strong. The last few weeks, we won major medals: rowing, cycling, hockey, triathlon, swimming. Gymnastics, archery. We've all been on top of that story, the archery story. Throw that in. But in fairness, you have to give credit to the likes of the Institute of Sport and what's going on in Abbottstown. and the high performance systems that have been put in place. I know TJ Doheny is a complete outlier in that. Like, this is nothing. Ireland can't take any credit for him. Like, he's gone to Australia. Now, he's been in Australia for years, so he's built himself up. But generally, I think there's a lot to be positive. The big issue is the soccer team. Even though I noticed in the Newsround we've gone up in the FIFA rankings by not playing, which is a great tactic. If we don't play for 5 or 6 years, we'd be top 5.
Switzerland did so well. They play very few friendlies and they stay on.
There's a way to do it. There's a method to it. Soccer next, Will.
Yeah, and Cork City aiming to pull off a big shock in Europe tonight. The League of Ireland champions 2-0 down going into the second leg of their Europa League third round qualifier against Rosenborg in Norway. Manager John Caulfield says they have to be clinical to have any chance in Trondheim tonight.
A lot of these games and these teams that, comes down to tight margins, and if you get opportunities you have to take them. And I suppose from our own point of view, probably we feel that Rosenborg didn't have to do a lot for their goals they scored against us, and that was disappointing. But at the same time, we did have a lot of possession. We had a number of half chances. We didn't probably create enough, but you could arguably say that they scored from 2 half chances and we didn't. So that's gone. We've looked at the game here. We know their strengths. We know they're good players. And but at the same time, we've come and we've discussed and we've analysed ways that we feel that we can get the first goal and bring ourselves back into tie-in. That's all you can do. And the one thing about our players and our club is that we've guys who are brilliant players, who have great attitude, have done fantastic for this club over the last number of years. And all you do tomorrow night is make sure they give everything they have, which I'm sure they will. Yeah,
John Caulfield doing his best to remain positive ahead of that game, but it's just a massive ask to go there and win by 2 goals is not easily done away from home. But the best of luck to them. Will's going to be all over that game over the course of the evening, kicking off at 7:45. Will.
Meanwhile, Dal Horgan says he's moved to Hibernian to get regular first-team football. He completed that move on a 3-year deal on Saturday. He was 18 months at Deepdale with Preston. Horgan's reveals that Republic of Ireland manager Martin O'Neill told him this summer that he needs to be playing more club football this season, and he was speaking on the Keith Andrews show earlier today. I
spoke to the manager after the US game, and he said, look, you need to play. He said, I'm going to games watching Preston and you're not even involved, so the priority for you has to be playing games. So, I completely understood, and, there's no God-given right to play games anywhere. So I'll have to play well and have to work hard. But I spoke to the manager here at Hibs and he said, there'll be opportunities if you're playing well. So that was key. Look, everyone wants to play for their country. Everyone, as a kid playing football, you dream of playing for your country at World Cups and competitions. So that was always what I wanted to do, and if I can get that opportunity a few more times, it'd be absolutely fantastic. Yeah, that was Darren Horgan speaking with Keith on the Keith Andrews show earlier. That's up. You can podcast it. It's also on our YouTube channel as well. You get it on Facebook also. Well worth a watch. Republic of Ireland, as Kieran mentioned, up 2 places now to 29th in the new FIFA World Rankings. Martin O'Neill's side lost to the World Cup champions France in May, so that one didn't hurt in terms of the rankings before defeating the USA in June. Ireland's next match against Wales in the new UEFA's Nations League on September the 6th. France are now the top team in the world, and Germany have tumbled 16 places on the back of their poor showing at the World Cup. So we didn't qualify, we didn't play any football, we have picked up 18 spots on the Germans.
Great way of putting it.
The way you want to look at it, yeah.
I love this system.
Yeah. Also, can I say, I have to put in the record, I'm delighted with Darrell Horgan go to Hibs. As one of the only Hibs fans in the country. So.
All right, well look, they're a club that are going places. Yeah. Neil Lennon's done an incredible job there. They're in action tonight, aren't they?
They're playing the Europa League qualifier.
Yeah. What was I going to say? No, my cousin played for them years ago. Right. That's a connection. Paul McGlinchey. He actually played with George Best. And remember George Best? I don't know if you remember, well, you wouldn't remember it, but George Best played a few games when the time he was going around the circuit, like he played in Cork, etc. So
I didn't know you were a Hibs fan, and you're definitely the only one I've ever met. So
there you go.
We'll see who the next one is.
They have a great song. Sunshine on Leith is great. You know the Proclaimer song when they all sing that? Yeah. Pretty good.
Harriet Scott is heading to Birmingham City.
Yeah, she's on a 1-year contract moving from Reading to Birmingham City. Just recently back from the injuries that put her out of Ireland's World Cup qualification games. Collarbone and then the leg injury after that when she came back. Kieran O'Hara, the Ireland under-21 goalkeeper, has joined Macclesfield on a season-long loan from Manchester United. He's dropped down the pecking order at Old Trafford after they signed Lee Grant as backup to David De Gea as well. You're going to be talking to Graham Hunter and probably about this later on as well. The USA will host a regular season La Liga match as part of a new 15-year deal to promote the league league in North America. Reports in the US today say it could happen as early as this season. With many of the people who brokered the deal involved Miami may well be the host venue. It'll be interesting to see which team has to give up home advantage for that game.
Yeah, that's an odd one, because if they're looking to promote the game, like they're going to want some of the big clubs, surely. Like, they're not going to be happy with
Getafe against Alaves.
Yeah, that's it. So.
Sorry to tell you, Kieran, that Hibs have gone 1 down, unfortunately. And 62 minutes gone in that game against Molde. The heralded Erling Braut Haaland has got the goal. That's a name you won't forget.
More importantly, has anybody set up a Wikipedia page for you in the last 15 minutes?
I'll check it once we're done here. Okay. John Longford is incredibly demanding. Well done to Doheny, but he's only a partial champion. To me, a world champion is someone who has all the belts. For example, Anthony Joshua. I don't know, is John Longford taking the mick?
Joshua still has a few to get anyway.
Yes, but even the point is a bit begrudging.
And there's been very, very few unified champions in the last
it's a virtually impossible thing to do.
And
as you say, Joshua was probably the closest guy to it at the moment. But OK, come back to us, TJ, when you've reunited all the belts, and we'll start giving you the credit you possibly deserve then. That's John Longford's feeling on it anyway.
Massive credit to Brand Snedeker. He's made a little bit of history today. Just the 11th player ever to shoot a sub-60 round on the PGA Tour. 5-shot lead in the clubhouse, 11 under par after signing for a 59. From an Irish perspective, it's all about Shane Lowry, Graham McDowell and Seamus Power finishing well this week. They need to be inside the top 125. Power started off 2 inside, but he's 2 over after 4 holes so far today. Shane Lowry, Graham McDowell realistically need to be in the top 5. 1 under par for Shane Lowry after his first round, and Graham McDowell's at level par. Course seems to be playing reasonably easy in Greensboro, so both of them have a lot to work to do over the next 3 days. The 2016 Paralympic medalist Ellen Keane will have her 100 metres backstroke final in the S9 in the next few minutes in Dublin at the National Aquatic Centre. Port Arlington teenager Nicole Turner placed 6th in the S6 class, while Longford's Patrick Flanagan was 5th in the same classification men's final. Jonathan McGrath and Alva Kelly are both in their S8 finals in just over an hour's time. Build up course towards the All-Ireland final this Sunday between Limerick and the defending champions Galway. The good news for Galway, Gerald McIntyre reportedly winning his race to be fit after missing the semi-final replay win against Clare with that calf injury. But Kilkenny legend Tommy Walsh was on OTB-AM this morning, and he's expressed his concerns about the future of hurling. The 9-time All-Ireland winner fears the marginalisation of club players and the lack of meaningful matches is now having a massively detrimental effect. The Club Players Association recently found 96% of their members are disconnected from the GA's hierarchy, and Walsh says he feels the game is in big trouble.
Oh, the club is a massive failure at the moment. Like it's terrible. It's an awful place to be. You know, you don't want to be really talking about, I suppose, too much coming up to the greatest day in the GA calendar, but they need to sort it out quick, because if they don't, like I was talking to a young lad in Tullerone the other day, under 17, like Kilkenny went on an amazing run. They're in the minor final next Sunday, so they've had 10 games, I think, in minor. Usually you might have 3 or 4 if you get to a final. Yeah. So they've had no under-17 games since, I think, was it the 1st of May or the last week in April. So you have an under-17, and remember now, they can't play junior or intermediate or senior anymore. They can only play a grade or 2 above their levels. So we have an under-17s that haven't played this summer. I thought it was just the adult guys, and the adult guys is worse again. Like, we played a match last April and have done basically nothing since. You're kind of trying to stay fit, and you don't want to be peaking back in May, you know, this kind of a thing. So even if you knew, right lads, go back training in May, you're starting championship in August, play your pre-season competitions in, say, June and July, off you go.
Yeah, that's Tommy Walsh there. He was in with Maura Trassa and Ger on OTB-AM this morning. You can podcast that as well. That's ahead of the hurling final this weekend. As of course, we already know that Dublin are taking on Tyrone in the football final. That's September 2nd at Croke Park. And we're going to be at GA headquarters ourselves the Thursday before that. August 30th, we'll be previewing the final. It's an all-star, not to be missed lineup. Aidan O'Shea, Kieran McGeeney, Senan Connell, Cora Staunton and many more stellar names, as we will be announcing in the coming days. Get on to offtheball.com/events now, and you'll be able to get your tickets before they're all gone.
Yeah, I think it was a very interesting point made by Tommy Walsh there as well. And like, I think for anyone who saw the game, the documentary on RT over the last 3 weeks, very little attention to any of the developing counties. It was all about the blue blood counties, your Cork, Tipperary, Kilkenny.
Well, that's the biggest indictment of hurling, of the GA as a whole, that hurling is still the same, more or less the same tiny group of counties as it's always been. Excuse me. And even there's a remarkable thing about hurling is Limerick in the final means there's been 7 different counties out of the 10 will have been the final in the last 6 years, which among that little group is very competitive compared to football. There's only 6 in football, which is a far greater breadth. But you know, the clubs.
If Limerick win it, it'll be what, 5 All-Ireland winners in 6 seasons?
Yeah.
Which is pretty incredible.
Yeah.
Look where we are with the football.
Like I always wonder if Donegal hadn't managed to upset Dublin that day, would Dublin be going for 7 in a row now? Would anybody else be capable of upsetting them? There is a very real chance it would, definitely. Yeah.
It's just interesting while the game is kind of thriving within kind of maybe 8 or 9 of the 10 counties. You kind of go north of Mullingar and the game is effectively dead all in second.
And that was actually very telling from the talking heads. Sambo McNaughton was the only person, I think, from North Mullingar basically that was interviewed. So.
Yeah. It's 2-0 to Malda, Kieran.
Okay. It's all over.
Sorry, this is a tough half an hour on air for you. But you're keeping it together.
I still hum Sunshine and Leith on the way home.
You're keeping it together professionally very well. Where are we finishing up with, Will?
The England out half Danny Cipriani has been fined £2,000 today for assaulting a bouncer and a policeman. The 30-year-old Gloucester pair, he's just moved to the club, got in a scuffle at a club in Jersey in the early hours of yesterday morning. He'll also pay £250 to the officer, whom he left bruised after he resisted arrest. Connacht are likely to put out their back row Owen Masterson for the start of the season. They've confirmed that the Leishman needs surgery on a hand injury he suffered in last week's friendly against Brive. Carlos Sainz will be replacing his fellow Spaniard Fernando Alonso as the driver for McLaren in 2019. Twice world champion Alonso announced this week he's quitting the sport. He's moving into IndyCar racing, and it looks like the Davis Cup is going to be on a global tour, a bit like La Liga. They say there's going to be a radical overhaul of the competition, and it will become an 18-nation, one-week event at a venue to be decided.
That is interesting.
And they'll be moving it around.
Okay, we might end up watching a bit more Davis Cup than we have in previous seasons. Will, thanks a million for that.
Thanks,
Kieran,
Dave.
Pleasure to have you with us. Thanks so much for coming in. Coming up after the break, we're going to be chatting to John Giles.
Off the Ball on News Talk.
Thanks to Screwfix.ie, championing the trade with a choice of over 20,000 quality trade products.
The Hard Shoulder.
Yes, the pale moon is rising over the Green Mountains, and I've a special